If you're like me, you have worked pretty hard to develop some self-awareness, maybe a good amount of self-awareness, and you're thinking, now what? What do I do with all this stuff I've discovered about myself? In this video, I want to talk about some of the traps that I have personally fallen into with the self-awareness craze and that I've seen other people fall into. And I want to give us something tangible to use all of this self-awareness for that will improve our communication, to make us better, more responsive listeners. The first trap that I found myself falling into was becoming what I call a self-awareness reporter, where I'm telling anyone who will listen about all of these discoveries and insights I'm finding about myself. I was already a chronic oversharer for most of my life, and now suddenly I'm telling my ex-wife about all of my deep-rooted childhood trauma as if that's going to fix our marriage, for example. I'm telling my friends about all these insecurities I didn't know I had as if they'll just magically dissolve. And I'm expecting these people to understand what I'm telling them. And that's the first assumption that underlies this self-awareness reporter trap, that people will understand. And let's be real, being understood is a basic need for knowing that we belong somewhere. So we want to make sure that we're sharing all of these insights about ourselves with someone from whom we can receive a question or I'm not sure I'm following. And the second assumption baked into this self-awareness reporter mindset is that telling someone is enough. Like I said, telling my friends about my insecurities as if they would just magically dissolve. And while it feels good to share these things with people, and it might even foster some deeper connection, some deeper relationships in the short term, in the mid to long term, it doesn't foster any real change. Simply telling someone does not change anything. Which leads me to the second trap that I have fallen into plenty of times, if I'm being perfectly honest. And that is the assumption that self-awareness is the same thing as healing. Like I mentioned, telling somebody doesn't magically heal us. Simply being aware and gaining more and more self-awareness doesn't help us to actually change any of those things. It's step one of a very long process. And a lot of what we are going to encounter and discover about ourselves are things that won't feel good, that won't feel like healing. So while all of this newfound self-awareness can feel good, problems come up when we stay at self-awareness and don't start to work with the things that we are now aware of to redirect those old patterns, to heal some of the wounds that are causing those patterns. And once the awareness stops feeling good, once I start to encounter some of the nasty stuff in there I don't really want to admit about myself, I'm gonna probably just stop. I'll stop there and say, oh, that's good, I'm self-aware enough. I've been guilty of this and I know other people have too. And the third trap I found myself in that I see pretty commonly played out online is what I call the self-awareness treadmill, where there's always more self-awareness to be had. There's always more to discover about myself. And since I think that that's healing me, or that telling someone about it is enough to start to heal me and actually make some change, I just keep getting more self-awareness. It's my new religion or my new drug. And the cycle goes, self-awareness feels good, it feels like progress. But I'm still not healing in the ways that I want to do or making the change that I want to make. So what I need is more self-awareness. And you can see how this quickly becomes a cycle. What do we do instead? I promised that I would give you something tangible to use all of this self-awareness for that would improve our communication, and here it is. We want to bring into our awareness our patterns of reactivity, the sort of automatic reactions that come up for us, especially when that conversation is challenging, that are driven by the emotions and sensations in our bodies that we're maybe less aware of, and suddenly we're interrupting somebody, or suddenly we're jumping in to fix or help them without asking if that's what they need or want. Maybe we're jumping in and getting defensive. That's everyone's favorite, right? We all do it. Or maybe even we're disengaging altogether, or we're just shutting down or going quiet and we don't really understand why. So these are the things that we can bring into our self-awareness, explore the body sensations and the emotions that are driving those patterns, and then begin to move through them and build better practices for communication. So for example, If I'm fixing and advising and comforting somebody just as an impulse, without them saying that that's what they need, it comes from a place of wanting to help, but we all know that it doesn't always help. Notice that there's probably some tension coming up in your body. Maybe your neck and your face get a little anxious energy, maybe some heat and sweat going on. So you want to jump in and help, because of course you feel uncomfortable when your friend is experiencing something uncomfortable, or your partner is expressing something uncomfortable to you, so you want to help them and fix it. Figure out where that impulse is coming from in your body, and you can just notice it and breathe into it, move with it, so that you don't have to just react from that place. The other example of disengaging or shutting down or going quiet in the conversation, there's probably some heaviness in your body, a pit in your gut, maybe this collapsing or compressing kind of sensation in your chest. That's what's usually present for me when I feel like shutting down. It's this protective, balling up kind of sensation and gesture that leads to me shutting down or disengaging altogether, or maybe even pulling out my phone to give this signal, this physical signal, that I'm not prepared for this conversation. So we build our awareness of what's going on in our bodies that drive these impulses, this reactivity, and then we practice simply breathing with it and letting it all be there. When we can do that and make space for what we are experiencing, we don't have to just react. You can even create a little mantra for yourself if that's helpful. For when these things come up, you can tell yourself something like thanking your body for giving you this information. I like to tell myself, of course I'm feeling that. And make space for it in a non-judgmental way, and then I can return my attention to the conversation. So with practice, you can notice all of this stuff and not react from it. This makes you a better listener, a more responsive, a more present listener, and it gives you space to choose an appropriate response instead of just jumping in or just shutting down or getting defensive. Give it a try and comment below. Let me know how it goes. And as always, let your heart do the talking.